Hey, welcome to the Explainer. You ever click a button on a website like Add to Cart or Post Comment and just wonder, what actually happens next? Well, today we're pulling back the curtain. We're going to dive into the invisible world that powers pretty much everything you do online, the backend.
Okay, so here's the game plan. We're going to cover what the backend even is, how different parts of a website talk to each other, what's going on inside the server's brain, where all the data is kept, and then we'll follow one request from start to finish. Let's get into it.
All right, first up, what is the backend? Think about a restaurant. You see the dining room, the menu, the waiters, but you don't see the kitchen, right? The backend is the kitchen of the internet. It's all the stuff that happens behind the scenes to make your experience possible.
So really, it all boils down to three key players. First, you've got the client. That's just a fancy word for your browser or the app on your phone. It's the part you can actually see and touch. Then there's the server, which is basically a super powerful computer sitting in a data center somewhere, doing all the heavy lifting. And last, you have the database, which is like the application's digital filing cabinet where everything gets stored.
Okay, so this is a super important distinction, front end versus back end. The front end is like the dashboard of a car. It's everything you see and interact with. The buttons, the layout, the colors. It's built with stuff like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. The back end, that's the engine. It's the part you don't see, running on the server, built with languages like Python or Go. It's what actually makes the car, well, go. Okay, so we have these two separate things, the client and the server, often thousands of miles apart. How in the world do they communicate? It's not magic. It's actually a really elegant system of requests and responses. The secret sauce is something called an API, an application programming interface. Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a waiter at a restaurant. You, the customer, are the client. You can't just walk into the kitchen and grab your food, right? You have a menu of options and you give your order, your request, to the waiter. The waiter, who is the API, takes that request to the kitchen, the server, and brings back your food, which is the response. The API is that crucial middleman. And that's it. That's the core conversation of the entire web. A client sends a request, and the server sends back a response. That simple little dance is happening billions of times, every single second, powering everything from your social media feed to your online banking. So if they're having a conversation, what language are they speaking? Well, most of the time, it's a language called JSON. And the reason everyone uses it is simple. It's super easy to understand for both people and computers. It's just a clean, lightweight way to package up data. And look, this is literally all it is. You have a key, which is just a label, like user underscore, and you give it a value, like Ajay. Or the key is active, and the value is true. That's it. It's just a bunch of labeled information, which makes it incredibly predictable and easy to work with. All right, we know what the server does. But how is it actually built? Let's pop the hood and take a look at the actual structure of a back-end application. You'll see it's not just chaos, it's a really organized system. So, a well-built back-end isn't one giant, messy file. It's broken down into folders. You've got your routes folder, which is basically the address book for your API. It tells requests where to go. Then you have controllers, which are the decision makers that contain all the actual logic. And finally, you have models, which are like blueprints that define what your data should look like. Let's look at a route. This little piece of code here is like a signpost. It says, hey server, whenever you get a request, specifically a GET request that looks like this URL with a user ID at the end, I want you to run the getUserById function. It's literally just mapping a URL to a piece of code. And that function it calls, that lives in the controller. This is where the real work happens. You can see it takes in the request, the rec, and it's responsible for sending back the response, the res. Everything in between, that's the business logic. That's the server thinking. And what about the model? Think of this as the rule book for your data. This code is defining what a user is. It's saying every user must have a name, which has to be text, and they must have an email, which also has to be text, and really importantly, has to be unique. No two users can have the same email. This keeps your data from becoming a total mess. So, we have all this perfectly structured data, but where does it all live? Well, that brings us to the database, the digital filing cabinet for our application. Now, you've got two main flavors here. On one hand, you have SQL databases. The easiest way to picture these is as a collection of really, really strict spreadsheets. Everything is in neat rows and columns, super organized. On the other hand, you have no SQL databases. These are more like a folder full of individual documents. Each document can have its own structure, which makes them way more flexible, especially when your data isn't always the same.
Okay, time to put it all together. We've seen all the pieces of the puzzle. Now let's follow one single request on its entire journey, from your click to the server and all the way back. Here we go. Step 1, you click on a profile, and your browser sends a GET request for user number 123. Step 2, the router on the server sees that URL pattern and says, aha, I know what to do with this, and it passes the request to the Get User by ID controller. Step 3, the controller grabs that ID, 123, from the request. Step 4, it then uses the user model to ask the database, hey, can you find me the user with this ID? Step 5, the database does its thing, finds the user's info, and hands it back to the controller. And finally, step 6, the controller packages that info up into a neat JSON response and sends it right back to your browser. Boom, the profile loads.
So in the end, that's what it is. The backend is the brain. It's the memory. It's the logic. It's this incredible, invisible force that's humming along behind the scenes, making everything you do online actually work.
So there you have it. What seemed like magic is really just a logical, step-by-step process. We've demystified the backend. So now that you know how it all works under the hood, the real question is, what are you going to build with it? Thanks so much for watching.